So the way it works is you, by default, and this is all appliances current prior to 9.4.1, there's just one sort of loopback pool that you'll assign, and that's for the what's called the global region. The global region is essentially the default region, which is kind of like if the appliance doesn't have a region assigned to it, then it's in the global region. So the current product prior to 9.3.1 had what you see on the screen here. You give it a segment, you tell it what source label to use, the zone, there's a management IP option, and there's a loopback pool range that you configure. The orchestrator will pull IP addresses out of that range from lowest to highest and start assigning them to edge connects as they are ZTP'd or as they're added to the fabric. To add a new loopback range, you click the Add Loopback Interface button, and then you will see a little panel pop up. I want to just kind of dwell on this for just a second and talk deeply about what this panel means. There is a label selection, so you need to go to the interface label screen, create a label, call it loopback or something similar. I like using all caps for these sort of label-oriented things because they're easier to spot in tunnel names and other stuff, but you can use any label you want as long as it doesn't have spaces. Loopback is a really popular one. Do not use the loopback label for any other interface. You can only have the loopback assigned, that label assigned that you're going to allocate to the loopback, just put it on the loopback. Don't put it on the LAN side interface also. It will let you do that, and it will create problems that will be hard to anticipate. Assign a zone to the label. So this is going to be the source zone for all the traffic that the Edge Connect needs to send from the label. It's a very important zone. Typically, you want to create a zone called management or something similar, because this is where a lot of management traffic is going to be coming from. And you'll need to make sure you configure it such that the management zone can talk to whatever the Edge Connect needs to talk to. So traffic coming from the loopback is treated as a LAN side interface, so it's subjected to policy in the same way that other interfaces on the Edge Connect would be. Next, you got this little management checkbox. This will cause the tree to show up with the IP address. That's essentially the IP for that Edge Connect. It's quite handy. You can just mouse over it. It will also cause it basically invokes IP management IP, whatever IP is assigned to that loopback. That command is invoked on the appliance. And that comes with it some considerations related to how management traffic is sourced and handled, that in almost all cases you want to check that box for the loopback itself. The earlier you do this in the deployment for the customer, the quicker you'll be able to tease out any kind of problems that might exist. And then finally, there's this thing, this region selection. This is what's new. So starting in 9.4.1, the reason we're talking about this TOI is we've added this region selector. So this dropdown will say global, which means this loopback I'm configuring applies to any IPs that aren't in a region that has a loopback. However, starting with 9.3.1, you can configure a different loopback pool. So notice down here in the bottom, have different subnet, different /24s for each one of these regions. This feature allows you on a per region basis to assign a specific pool. Imagine you have a European IT shop or network guys and some North American folks. They all have their own equipment and they want to announce these summarized prefixes for their loopback space between each other, but not all the individual /32s. One of the problems with this thing is that it does generate a lot of routes. ECs can only be in one region at a time, which is just a fundamental nature of how the system works. What that means is that if you move an Edge Connect, let's say that I have an Edge Connect that's in the central region, and it's assigned an IP, a loopback IP address from 1043.15.0/24. If I change the regional assignment for that Edge Connect to EMEA, the way this works is that the loopback IP address that was assigned to that Edge Connect before it got moved, it's reserved. It will not be reassigned. It is permanently allocated to that Edge Connect, even if that Edge Connect leaves the region. So if you move the Edge Connect to the other region, the orchestrator will put a new loopback on that device, but it saves the old loopback you used. This means that technically you can move Edge Connects back and forth between different regions, and it will have a different IP depending on which region it's in, and it remembers that IP address for future purposes. We try not to reuse one of the fundamental things here is that the orchestrator tries not to reuse loopbacks until you click the reclaim button. So as you age out Edge Connects, maybe you delete a site or whatever, you'll see that the number of deleted or sort of retired IP addresses will go up. And over time, you might decide to hit the reclaim button. Yeah, so in other words, when an EC is added, I want to make really clear on this. When an EC is added to a region, it is assigned a permanent regional IP that persists even if the Edge Connect is moved to a different region. So that when you move it back, it will pick up that IP once again. Each region also, this is sort of a subtlety to just the way it's implemented. The LO 20,000 is the reserved range for orchestrated loopbacks, and it will increment the LO number by 1 for each region. So all the loopbacks in, for instance, here, this is the West region. The West region is using LO 20,007. Singapore region APJ is using 20,006, and so on. So don't be surprised when you see these incrementing loopback numbers. That's just the way it's designed. It shouldn't matter. The actual LO number usually shouldn't matter because you should be referring to the interface label and not the physical name of the or logical name of the interface itself. It's very important. When you first add, you click the add loopback interface button. You go through that dialog that I showed you where you select the label and the zone and so on. You hit save. You'll get to a point where the screen looks, well, you'll just see this on the screen. You still need to click this button. You need to click in the loopback pool and edit the default pool assignment. You notice that by default, when you add a new pool, it will always pick 10.0.0.0/24. So you have to remember to click this button and then edit the subnet pool range. This is kind of a subtlety of just our nuance of the way the UI operates, but just remember to click this button, edit the pool, and then hit update and hit save. Okay, and then finally you can reclaim the loopbacks. The intention here is not to reuse loopback IP addresses because it confuses systems like syslog collectors, forensic systems, NetFlow collectors in particular. So we try to bind the source loopback IP address to a given Edge Connect appliance. That's done on purpose. You can reclaim or free up these devices by clicking on the reclaim button, and then you can reclaim individuals or you can reclaim all. Pretty nice, pretty straightforward. Filter, again, using loopback prefixes is nice because you can refer to the entire prefix instead of individual IP addresses from the pool. So you can do find by subnet in the routes table, for instance, to see all the loopbacks. They're always treated as land-side data path interfaces. That means they get redistributed into subnet sharing just as any other land-side interface would, which means, of course, that you now do have all these /32s floating around in your fabric. You don't delete the loopbacks unless you are really sure that you've unbound all the stuff bound to the label. It tries to prevent you from doing this, but there's so many different places that, like DNS proxy, App Express, BGP peering, IPSLA, all these things kind of need the loopback. So if you just delete it, all those things kind of temporarily break, and it will cause a lot of turbulence. It will cause a lot of noise within your fabric for a few minutes until it settles down. So be careful just deleting an orchestrated loopback outright. It won't typically impact the data path, but if it takes down BGP or IPSLA, it certainly could. So proceed with caution. You can also, I'll remind you guys, we have this feature called address groups, which are logical groups. They're logical named prefix lists would be one way of describing them. You can make a prefix list called, or an address group called SD-WAN Loopbacks, for instance, and just include all the ranges. Look at how the range definition works. It's very convenient. So there's 1043.10-20.0/24. It will let you do that, which is quite handy. So this encapsulates all the regional loopback ranges that I'm using. So I can refer to just SD-WAN Loopbacks default and just get all the loopback ranges in one match criteria.